Okay,
Yeah.
your next controversial opinion. Lay it on us.
Okay. Well, it's sort of a question because I am not Catholic, but I ask all my favorite Catholics this. I don't understand why Catholic priests can't get married. It just seems bizarre to me and seems to not be a strength of the church. And I'm always looking for clarification. I don't know if you have an opinion on this.
I would love to give my opinion on this. Actually, one of my controversial opinions is on religion as well. So the reason Catholic priests can't be married is the same reason that a married man can't be married to more than one woman. Because when you are married to someone, you are supposed to dedicate your whole being to the service of that person, to sanctify that person, to make them holy. So like my husband is married to me and no one else, a Catholic priest has dedicated his life to essentially being married to the church, to serve that church. We also know in the Gospels that young people are told, if they can, to stay chaste and to stay single in service of God. And it's borne out. It's borne out in over now 2 millennia that this has been the way the church has done it, and this has been a good thing. Now, you can make arguments, and I know that this is a very common argument from Protestants and evangelicals. Well, what about when these men aren't having sex? Doesn't this drive them towards sex abuse? Doesn't this drive them towards homosexuality in seminaries? And I don't think that bears out. I don't think if you remain a virgin or you're celibate, it drives you to be a child sex abuser. I don't think that there's a connection there. Yeah. I do think that there is a discernment process that the church has neglected in selecting candidates for the priesthood who struggle with these things prior to entry into seminary that could probably eliminate a lot of the problems. And I think that what used to happen in Catholic Church is there used to be a community of priests that would live together. So you always had community. You were never lonely. You were never on your own. But because there's such a priest shortage now, especially parish priests oftentimes live in an apartment by themselves, so they lack that community, which, again, I'm not saying that living by yourself and being lonely drives you to horrible sex crimes, but there is an element of community that serves as a bulwark against evil. So you'll have to count me as a traditionalist on Catholic priests being married. I can't picture, honestly, as a lifelong Catholic, I can't picture some of the holiest, most influential priests. Like, they're busy dawn to dusk. Like, they would have to cut their ministry in half, in a third, if they also had the primary duty of providing for their family and protecting their wife and children. So I don't know if that's as detailed of an answer as you're looking for, but that one, I do have to fall with the church on this.
No, I think it's so interesting. I asked James Coughlin of Freedom Tunes a similar question. He basically said, they don't have the time. They're devoted to the church, and that's where their priority needs to be. And I grew up Episcopalian, so I'm familiar with Catholicism. I have Catholic family members. I'm happy to. It's not a question of the Catholic Church, but it is a cultural. It's a specific part of the Catholic Church that I have always been really interested in, especially because we know that fewer men are seeking the priesthood. And I think it's so interesting to hear that you point towards discernment, which is, again, similar to a conversation I had with my, Irish Catholic from Chicago, Seamus Coughlin, because I think that is something that people lack in all parts of their life right now. There are so many people who are unsure of their direction. And one of the priest at the Catholic Church that my family attends now is brilliant, interesting. I could definitely understand where, he's pretty young, there's isolation. And he talks about having to decide between, this wonderful girlfriend he had and this calling that he felt. And I think it is interesting, as much as I always go back and forth on it, because, again, I grew up with priests that could get married and could have families. And I felt there was a value in living through the phases of life that your parishioners were also going through. I can see how being a representation of sacrifice and this calling are actually something that we're sort of hungry for as a culture. And so it's not something that I'm not going to topple the Catholic Church over it. I just never totally understood it, because it seems like there are other options, especially when you're trying to recruit young Catholics.
I understand that. I think one of the reasons the Catholic Church is struggling with the vocations, meaning young men aren't discerning the priesthood, is not because young men want to be married. I think young people are actually getting married in the smallest numbers ever before since it's been recorded. I don't think that it has even to do with the decision like, if I'm a priest, I'm not going to have sex. If I'm married, I'll be able to have sex. I don't think it's that. I think it's that the Catholic Church has been negligent in their catechesis. They have not fostered faith in the younger generations. And it is a huge sacrifice. I mean, it's a calling, it's a vocation, it's a wonderful thing to be a priest, but it is a lifestyle that only a minority of people in our country choose to commit to. And you have to be so alive in your faith and so surrounded by a solid faith community to even lead you to the point that you can envision that as a reality, or that you can hear that calling. That I would say, and this is just my opinion thinking about this, that is where I would say the Catholic Church has been negligent in trying to foster those vocations, not because young men are like, oh shoot, I just really wanted to have sex, but as a priest you can't. I could be wrong though.
Sure. I don't know. I think there is something to be said. I don't know that it's about whether or not they can have sex. I think it's more about the sacrifice. And I see this borne out in other things. I mean, there are so many women who say, well, I'm not going to have children. I want to put it off because I want to be selfish. I don't want to have to sacrifice. I think there is an aversion to personal discomfort in the pursuit of something greater. And so in that sense, I could see it, one of the reasons that having a strong priest in your community who has made that choice, and maybe you're not discerning the priesthood, maybe you're just, discerning what to do with your life, and there might be sacrifice involved, is a good role model. It was one of the things that I found interesting. For a while, I knew a lot of people who were raised either, Catholic, Christian, maybe nothing, and they were all pursuing Eastern Orthodoxy. And I found this really interesting because often they told me one of the things I like is that the priests can have children, and that they are, they are encouraged to get married because then they are living out the life that their community is experiencing. They are parenting alongside other people, and that they're aware of those challenges. And I felt similarly growing up in an Episcopalian church. I mean, our priest, I think his son was on my brother's Little League team. And so I didn't just see him at church, I saw him in my community. But I could see, the Catholic priest that my family, goes to now, he definitely just goes to all the Christmas party. He's around all the time. So, and like everything, life is what you make of it.
It is. And I think that might be a difference in perspective from a Protestant viewpoint, a Catholic viewpoint too, is that Protestants view their ministers as a pastor, right? It's a leader of the community. He's there to preach sermons, to guide, to counsel. And Catholic priests are viewed a little bit differently. They're not there just to be living the same life beside you. They actually are holy. They're set apart.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be different than parishioners because they're supposed to act in persona Christi, which is as God's representative on earth, especially during the sacrifice of the Mass. So maybe that's somewhat of the difference as well. There actually are a couple of married Catholic priests. Father Dwight Longenecker, I don't know if you know him. He's active on conservative Twitter. He was a Protestant minister or an evangelical priest or some other denomination, some other Christian denomination. He converted to Catholicism, and that's the one exception the Catholic Church allows. If you were a priest in another Christian religion, you convert to Catholicism, you're allowed to receive holy orders and become a Catholic priest. And so he's one of the few married priests, which to me, coming from a different background than you on this, is strange to me. Like, it's hard for me to picture a priest as being married.
I'm like, they're poaching our priests. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,